Hey guys, welcome back here to the Fishing Teacher. Appreciate you guys swinging by the channel to watch today's video. And guys, today I want to explain to you why some people are consistently catching smaller fish than other people. And if you're struggling to do well in terms of catching quality fish, a couple different things, there's reasons why that is I want to get into today. Because one of the things I've noticed, just like in the tournament realm, there'll be a lot of people out there that catch a limit of fish, but they're barely keepers. They're like, if there's 14-inch limit on the lake that you're fishing, they'll have a limit of 14 inchers or 14 and a half inchers, and then somebody else comes in with a 20-pound limit. Now, there's a reason for this, and I want to identify what that is in today's video. I think it's going to help you guys out. Also, guys, for get started, quick reminder, you heard me been talking about the live stream. I'm getting started up with my YouTube channels. Got the first one set, guys. We're going to start it a week from this Thursday, which would be the 15th. I think the 15th of February, on Thursday, 6:30. And this live stream is going to be a private live stream that's open up to my channel members and my Patreon members. So if you're interested in being part of that, just go to my homepage here on the Fishing Teacher, sign up to be a channel member, or go into the description of the video and you can sign up to be a Patreon member, and you can get the invite to this private live stream where we're going to talk about everything fishing, things we can't talk about on the main channel. We'll have a chance to interact with your comments, so hope to see you guys there. Okay, this is one of the things for me that I've noticed this before, and also it relates directly even if you don't fish tournaments, is in tournament competition, I've noticed over the course of the years, and I've even fell into this rut myself a little bit, where some guys, they consistently catch bass, but they're catching smaller bass than the anglers that do better. It's like they can come in with 5 fish, but they're 14 and a half inch fish versus 3-pounders. Now, why is that if those people are fishing the same baits and, they have, pretty much level playing field on that? What is it that separates catching a 14-incher from a 3-pounder? Now, this is a complicated question, because the first thing that you have to do is you have to understand that there's a lot of things that contribute to this, because it's not as simple as saying, well, if you're catching 14 inchers and somebody else is catching 3-pounders, maybe you need to put that shaky head down and then, go to a jig or something, or go to a bigger bait. That's not the case, but guys, because I've seen people that do really well catch big loads of fish on a little finesse bait versus going to a bigger one. I'll give you a prime example. We fished a FLW tournament on Smith Lake. This has been about 20 years ago. And I'm way up the river flipping a jig on laydowns, trying to catch big fish, slow rolling a big spinnerbait on laydowns too. And I think the first day of the tournament, I had a limit that weighed like, 8.5 or 9 pounds, flipping a big jig, the spinnerbait type of thing. And then I remember Andy Morgan was in like the top 5 in the tournament, and he said he was catching them on a little 4-inch worm on a shaky head. So he's in the top 5 fishing a little shaky head, and I'm up the river, with the big flipping stick trying to catch big ones. He catches 18 pounds or whatever, and I catch 8 or 9 pounds. So that made me realize that it's not the bait that you're using a lot of times. That's not it. It's the thing that it is, it's identifying those areas where the bigger fish are hanging out in. And this, again, opens up a whole new can of worms, because when you're talking about areas that are producing bigger fish, you're also talking about depth zones and specific type of cover. Now, this is one of the things that frustrates you, because like in that tournament, Andy was maybe fishing a shaky head on bluff banks, and I'm up there flipping heavy cover, not catching them. But the thing about it that it made me realize is that the time of year that I was up the river, those good fish weren't as plentiful. There were fish up there, and there was a lot of fish, but the bigger females were not using that depth zone. And Andy was on the other end of the lake, on the lower end of the lake, catching big spotted bass and some largemouth in that depth zone of like 10 to 20 foot with the shaky head. So the thing that you have to do, number one, is you have to identify the depth zone that the bigger fish are in, because this is the big key to it. You got to concentrate on that right depth zone, and that depth zone, it can be anything. I've seen times where the big fish are in 3 foot of water and the little fish are in 30 foot of water. And I've seen sometimes the big fish are suspended and the little fish are on the bottom. And I've also seen times when the little fish are suspended and the big fish are on the bottom. So the thing that you have to do is you have to determine the key depth for those bigger fish. This is the big part of it. And in correlation with that, you have to not only figure out the key depth for those bigger fish, but you have to figure out the type of cover for them. The cover can be whatever it is. It could be drop-offs, visible bank cover. It could be rock cover. Might not be any cover. They might be suspended. You got to determine that. And then another thing on top of it, you have to determine the weather patterns that are conducive to catching those bigger fish. Sometimes the weather patterns have to be certain. They have to be a certain type of weather pattern to trigger that bigger fish. Say, for example, if you're fishing a big moving reaction bait, you're going to need some wind and clouds. That bait's not going to work very good, in bright sunny conditions. So every bait is going to have a relative success ratio in terms of the size based upon the weather conditions. And then finally, the fourth one, those are four things. And the fourth one, guys, is you have to determine the right color, because sometimes color makes a big difference in the size of the fish that you catch. I'll give you a prime example. Let's talk about jigs. Jigs come in a wide range of colors, but I can promise you, if you use like a green pumpkin jig or a brown jig, and you catch 100 bass with a green pumpkin or brown jig, and then you go to a black and blue jig or a black jig or a black and chartreuse jig, and say you catch 100 fish on that, I can guarantee you that the 100 bass that you catch on the black and blue jig are going to weigh 25% more than the green pumpkin or the brown. That's a color differentiation. And it's the same with like a crankbait. Most of the time, your bigger fish are going to hit like some type of a fire tiger or pearl or chartreuse-sided crankbait, and your smaller fish are going to hit the shad patterns and the more translucent patterns. Not to say that you can't catch occasionally good ones on that, but there's certain lure colors out there that are simply more conducive to catching big fish on. So the main thing that you got to realize, guys, is when you're doing this, is you got to assess the entire situation. You've got to find the right area of the lake, number one, because that right part of the lake is seasonal. Every part of the lake is going to have its time of the year that it's better than others. So seasonally, you're going to have to figure out the right time, right part of the lake based upon the season. Then you're going to have to figure out, how the weather conditions are affecting those particular areas. You have to figure out the right depth and the right bait for them. You have to figure out the right lure color for them. There's all this stuff that comes into play with it. And it is reproducible because I have seen it over and over again where you'll have guys that consistently catch pound and a half bigger fish than anyone else in the field. I look back at some of the guys that have really been on a roll in tournament fishing that I've watched, guys like Andy Morgan and Greg Hackney, and there's 10 or 15 of them out there. Those dudes consistently catch bigger fish than everybody else, and they're basically not doing anything different, but they are identifying what I just spoke about there. So anyway, guys, hope it helps you out. We'll talk later.